Have you ever wanted to time travel? Perhaps the 23rd century. Where would you go? Maybe see Rome? Greece? Turkey? The Americas? How about Venice? Let's go visit Venice. And the reason I'm bringing that up, guys, is that I'm not going to Venice, but the Doctor and Charlie are. This is Who's Corner with the Stones of Venice. Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode of Who's Corner, and I'm your host, Mr. D. So let's start off the Stones of Venice with a classic Doctor Who scene. The Doctor and his companion getting shot at. So they have arrived at this planet with no name. The Doctor has liberated its people, and the remaining soldiers of this vast empire are now chasing them back to the TARDIS, trying to kill them. And while running, the Doctor's like, how about a trip to Venice? And Charlie's just like, wow, you really have not a clue in your head of what's going on. And once they reach the safety of the TARDIS and head off, Charlie says that she's going to go check on Ramsay. Now, Ramsay has absolutely no part to play in this. He really didn't in the last episode, but he's not even a voice at all in this one. And he only has one other appearance, which is in the next episode of Minuet in Hell. And as the Doctor's like, well, I want to show you this beautiful place of Venice and everything, and it's kind of like a cover-up because he knows he's going to have to eventually take her home, and she even mentions that, like, what will my family think when you just drop by with me and you finally bring me home? And he knows full well that he's not going to be able to. In the next scene, we have the Duke lamenting the loss of his precious Estella, wondering if she would return, would she forgive him? And his little art dealer, critic, I guess the curator of the museum is like, I really don't know, Your Grace. I just don't think that if she were here, would she be able to fix the problems with Venice? And the Duke is just like, I think that she would if she understood how much that I have missed her and that I am sorry. And that maybe that she will forgive me enough to lift the curse so that everything will be saved. And Churchill's like, yeah, but even if she did, there's really no such thing as this curse that you keep talking about. Let's just, figure out a way to still be alive by sunrise. And as Charlie's kind of, she doesn't really want to go to Venice. She's always been told that Venice is kind of gloomy. And that, she'd rather get out of this gothic cathedral of a TARDIS into something colorful, bright, beautiful, full of parties and happiness. And that is true. And if you look at from Paul McGann on up to, I guess you could say, Capaldi, all the TARDIS interior is really kind of the same. It is this kind of either earthy, gothic, a steampunk, if you will. There's really nothing that changed about it, and she was thinking more like gleaming white surfaces, when she would have definitely loved Hartnell's, which is very minimalist, or even Peter Davidson's, which was very white. And when they arrive, he promised her, I guess, the early Venusian Renaissance or something. But it turns out it's the 23rd century. And the Doctor tells her that that's not good because Venice is basically on the verge of collapse. And, well, hey, this might be its last day. Let's go enjoy it. The Duke continues to lament. I mean, this is one of the common themes with this audio. You have a Duke that continuously whines and groans, and then you have Churchwell, and you will see that Churchwell is not a lovable character. He just moans and groans and whines so much. I can understand having one of these characters act like this, but both of these characters, getting off topic. So he's saying that, I had no right to gamble Estella. I had no right. It was foolish of me. and the pain in her eyes. She had every right to curse me. And Churchill's like, sir, I mean, you really have to understand Venice was just doomed from the beginning. You build a city on a canal, it's eventually just gonna topple in. There's no such thing as a curse. And the Duke doesn't want to hear anything of this. And even if she did come back, once again, sir, that the Venice is doomed, it will fall. So as the Doctor and Charlie arrive, and Charlie, I guess, is looking all fancy and everything, she's ready for a party, and the Doctor, I guess, and he does say, there's a part of there that his outfit is now green, which we're more used to him being in the purple type of Bill Hickok type of outfit that he wears. Later on, it becomes kind of a dark purple overcoat. But in this one, it's mentioned that it's green, so I don't know. Bad writing. It's just different. So they meet this creepy old woman outside, and the Doctor's like, good morning, madam. And she's like, sir, it is in the evening time. Are you drunk? And he's like, no. And Charlie's like, I'm so sorry about him. And they make introductions, and the old lady introduces herself as Miss Lavish. And she is there to basically see the depravity of what the city has become. And she thinks that the Doctor and Charlie are one of these revelers that have come to either steal what is left of the city, drink out in the streets, and be just disgusting, or they have come to see one last glimpse of history before it topples into the water. And as Charlie's like, wow, this is a really fun place to be, Doctor. Thank you for bringing me to this very gloomy place. And Miss Lavish is like, I'm just telling you kind of what you're going to be expecting. And when they ask her why she's there, she's like, I've just come here to find a nice, peaceful death. To finally witness the end and just go out with a flicker. But she does bring one thing up. Because the Doctor, is there out of curiosity, a scientific curiosity. And that if there was any way that Venice could be saved is now squished when Miss Lavish says Venice is doomed because of the curse. And of course, curiosity killed the cat. The Doctor asks her, what is this curse, Miss Lavish? And she's a very brilliant woman. She's like, that is as much as information as you're going to get out of me, Doctor. If you wish to be with the revelers and find out more information, go to the parties, go to the palace. You will get nothing more out of me. So Churchill is now complaining to the Duke as they head down to the party that they must find a way to get the collection, all the paintings, all the frescoes, I guess all the sculptures out of the city. And you gotta understand, this is it's like only a few hours left until, I guess, midnight. They say sunrise sometime, but it's like midnight would be the next day. But the Duke is like, Churchill, I never had a stomach for art. But Churchill's like, but Estella did. Your forebears did. And losing such a collection would be a crime. And the Duke is like, just go, Churchill. You being here and whining kind of amuses me at times, but you're just getting on my nerves. So he tells Churchill to leave, but first he's like, come join me for the parties. And Churchill's like, no, sir. I'd rather spend my last few remaining hours with the portraits and all the paintings. And so he heads off. Charlie and the Doctor are now relaxing, traveling down in the gondolier, captained by a very handsome man known as Pietro. And as Charlie is looking at this eye candy, she remarks to the Doctor, who is kind of trying to take a nap, that he's got webbed fingers and toes. And he's kind of bickering, like, why don't you just, watch your little eye candy and everything while I get some sleep and think about what we need to do. And the gondolier, Pietro, is laughing. He's like, you guys are very different than the rabble that I have to deal with and most of my people have to deal with. You're kind. I mean, you bicker towards each other like you're like a married couple, but you're polite to me. You care. And Charlie finds that kind of strange, but you're people and you want to be treated as people. And Pietro's like, yeah, but you won't get that from these people. And he remarks that once the city has finally fallen into the lagoon, that his people, the gondoliers or the canal folks, will finally be able to reclaim what was theirs. Well, Charlie's very interested in this social injustice of these people. But as they arrive, the doctor kind of pushes that out of her mind and introduces her to their next destination of fun. A moldy old museum. Charlie's like, that's not what I wanted. I wanted you to take me to a party. And he's like, but this is better than a party. All these great old frescoes and paintings. And as he's just walking off, I mean, that's what I love about this guy. He just walks off thinking that his companions are right behind him, because I guess he's used to that. I mean, I can't see Ace just not following. She had great respect for Sylvester McCoy's doctor, but Charlie's like, yeah, no. It doesn't even tell him. So she hangs back to go after Pietro while he heads inside to, see what's left, basically. And of course, I mean, she wants to party. That's why she got all dressed up. Miss Lavish, meanwhile, is just aimlessly wandering around. She's muttering to herself. Now, in my head, and especially in the illustration, she's very wild-eyed. She's angry at the world, and you've got to see, like, you've met people like this. They're just muttering to themselves. They're just so pissed off, and all she sees, and she just is appalled by all the drinking, the scum, the villainy, the cultists. Everything about Venice that she once loved is dead, and once it sinks and falls apart and she dies with it, will she be able to rest in peace? So the doctor is very curious about what happened to lead the Duke to just basically give up on the city. And as Churchwell is kind of an older man, but he was not alive when this happened. Now, legend has it that 100 years ago, the Duke, in a game of cards, bet Estella, and he lost. And out of her pain and her anger, she cursed him and the city for 100 years. Now, the curse basically is that Venice will stay alive for 100 years and then collapse. The Duke will live for 100 years more without aging. But there was no... I mean, I guess he would die with the city. It's not really well known. And the reason that the Duke is so hurt, and he knows what he did was wrong. So he's just basically sitting on his throne thinking about when he first met Estella and how Venice fell in love with her and how all these other towns and cities and kingdoms would come just to see her, and they fell in love with her. She had libraries and her museums, and she cared so much about the people. But yet when the Duke gambled her away, she broke like crystal. Now, as Pietro's talking too, he's also given the same history. And he's saying that legend has it is that after the Duke gambled her away and she left, she committed suicide. Now, no one really knows exactly what she did. Some say that she just flung herself off into the canal, wearing her wedding dress and her wedding rings. I mean, you could just say that she just vanished. And that the Duke looks for her. He tries to find her remains, which is what the cultists are claiming to do. They're trying to find relics of the past. And the Duke sends out most of his time and the city's money just to find her, because he thinks in his head that if he finds her remains, the curse will be lifted. But if she's dead, how is she going to forgive him? So, as the doctor gets his information, he tells Churchwell, look, thank you for telling me this, but I have a ship that I can tell you now that I have a way that you can get your collection onto my ship and they will not be ruined, and I will save them and you. And Churchwell's like, "Oh, that's great, Doctor. I mean, where is it?" And of course, before any of this, I mean, you got to think that maybe he's been in this museum for over an hour. He finally realizes that Charlie's not there. So after a whole hour of her not saying one word, the Doctor realizes his companion is missing in a city that is full of thieves and looters, muggers, drunken people, cultists, and that he never realized she wasn't there. So he runs off to try to find her, and Churchwell goes after him, begging him to tell him where this ship is so that he can save his collection. And at the inn and bar, after Pietro's given his history, that the gondoliers are tired of the Duke's depravity and that they don't want the curse to be lifted. They want to rule the lagoon again like they once were. They don't want to be the servants. They don't want to be the slaves of people. And as Charlie's like, well, I don't know how that's going to either affect it and everything, but she's like, I need to get back to the Doctor. And Pietro's like, but we need you, Charlie. We need you to distract the Duke long enough so that he stops looking for Estella's remains and the curse will be fulfilled. But she's like, she's kind of confused. Like, how is that going to work, Pietro? And he tells her, we need you to become the embodiment of Estella. You will pretend to be Estella reincarnated. And of course, Charlie's like, yeah, I'm done. Bye, Pietro. And she is suddenly swarmed by all these gondoliers who basically knock her out. And the Doctor and Churchwell are running down all these alleyways. And the Doctor's trying to find Charlie. Why Churchwell went with him? He must be that desperate to save these paintings. And as an art lover, I get that. But I'm just like, dude, you were safer in your museum. And he even says that. And this is where Churchwell gets so whiny. He's like, I should have stayed in the museum. Why didn't you help me, Doctor? And he keeps telling him, Doctor, you got to tell me where your ship is. And the Doctor's like, look, Churchwell, I appreciate you telling me all this stuff, but I've got to find my companion. And he's like, all of this means nothing to me now. And it certainly doesn't when they are confronted by Vincenzo and all his cult buddies. And as Churchwell's like, oh, they're going to kill us, Doctor. And the Doctor's like, now wait, we can talk this through. And of course, though, these cultists ain't going to talk anything through. As we've all seen, I love how the Doctor's like, we can talk this through. But like we see with the Daleks or the Cybermen, the Autons, they're not going to listen. It's kind of cute how you can picture Paul McGann holding out his hands like, wait, you lot. And of course, Vincenzo's like, gods render them unconscious. And they get bashed in the back of the head, knocked out, and taken to this underground lair as Vincenzo tells them as they're unconscious that they will bear witness to her grand resurrection. When Churchwell and the Doctor come out of their little nighttime coma, they are stunned, well, not really stunned, Churchwell's not stunned, to find that they have been placed into a type of dungeon in the cultist lair that the Doctor finds kind of amusing. He's never been in a lair before, and even though they will probably be executed, he kind of finds that amusing. And he asks Churchwell, well, why are they after you? What's so important about you? And Churchwell replies, well, it's because they think that I know where the portrait of Estella is. And the Doctor's like, is such a portrait, does it exist? And he goes, well, no. Estella never wanted her likeness in any type of medium, whether it be painting, drawing, stone. But the cultists are convinced that he knows where it is, so that they were always trying to get a hold of him so that they could hold him ransom, that the Duke would just surrender this portrait in exchange for him. And it's one of those weird kind of cult things, they want relics of the past. I mean, the Crusades are a big example of that, whether it be something as mythical as the Holy Grail, the spear, the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch. And while they're examining a way to, either to find the door, the Doctor comes across a piece of the wall that's been damaged. And, well, since he believes they're underwater, so all the stonework is probably just turned to mush. So he pushes through and he tells Churchwell to follow him, or he can just stay here and they will come and kill him. And as they're pushing the bricks out aside, they hear all this chanting coming from some other part of the layer, and the doctor wonders if they were into human sacrifices. When Charlie comes to, she is lying in one of the gondolier boats. Pietro, tells her to look at herself. I don't know if they have a mirror, but she can look down and see that she's wearing this beautiful dress, and it's Estella's wedding dress, which is probably one of the relics that the cultists were looking for, but the gondoliers had it because, as they said, they were trying to find somebody that would fit a description enough to be Estella, which is kind of strange that they thought this would work because Charlie and Estella probably looked nothing alike. But Pietro was so convinced that he could use Charlie to fool the Duke. And I love how Pietro's kind of thinking that even though Charlie wanted to help him, he still has that smarmy kind of, do you think that, in your human brain, I don't know what Pietro is. I don't know what the gondoliers are. They're mermen, as they call themselves sometimes. But he's like, do you think that you were not sure that we fish people could ever conjure up such beautiful fineries and everything and find such a Stella's dress and restore it to once it was? And Charlie's like, I don't really care. I was already sympathetic towards you. Why did you need to knock me out? And also, she's now flooded with all these memories and these thoughts that are not her. It's like having, 16 other voices in her head telling her what to do. And she demands to know what he fed her. And he's like, it's just a drug. It's not permanent, but it's going to take control of your body to make you Estella. So that the Duke will be convinced that you are the reincarnated form of Estella. So that he will stop looking for Estella's remains. So that... See, even he's convinced that if finding Estella's body will lift the curse. But I still don't know why he thinks this is such a great idea, because now he's leading Charlie, who he does care about, to this crazy man, and if he's not convinced by her, he'll probably have them both killed. The next room that the Doctor and Churchill find themselves in, or at the way that the wall that's crumbling leads them, is to this other type of chamber that has a bunch of torches. There's a giant clock, at least in my head, there's a giant clock that's ticking down the time of something. And they find this huge, beautiful, ornate, jewel-encrusted golden sarcophagus. And Churchill is like, oh, this is not good. And in his head, he's thinking, oh my god, we just stumbled across the casket of Estella, and he's like, we're going to be executed for sure, Doctor. And the Doctor's like, well, let's open it up and find out. I mean, well, why not? We're already here. And Churchill's like, complaining again that we should have just stayed in the dungeon. They probably would have gone easier on us. The Doctor's like, no. So he orders Churchill to help him push the lid off and makes him look in. And what do they find? Nothing. This whole beautiful sarcophagus is empty except for some jewels, which the Doctor does take and pocket. But as Churchill's like, after 100 years, she's probably already rotted away, but there would still be some bones. But the Doctor has a theory that she has not rotted away, she's been taken away. In his head, he's probably thinking, that either she's... one thing, that maybe the body never existed, or these cultists are playing with them, or they never had it to begin with. But of course, though, they had the jewels. So, there's that. And as the Doctor puts the lid back on the sarcophagus, Francesco and all the other cultists storm in, and they are really ready to execute them. But they know the importance of Churchwell. Why they don't kill the Doctor, I don't know. Maybe he thinks that the Doctor's very knowledgeable and that maybe the Duke knows him? I don't know. So, Francesco gives Churchwell an ultimatum. We can kill you right now, or you go to the Duke and you force him to give us the portrait. And Churchwell's like, look, you fools, there was never such a portrait. And the doctor's like, of course there was. You just told me there was. And Churchwell's like, doctor, why are you putting us in more danger? There was no portrait. And he's like, yes, there is. It's at the Ducal Palace. And so Vincenzo's like, yes, I knew you were lying. He's like, you will take us to the portrait, Churchwell. And the doctor's like, hurrah, let's go. I mean, it was a way to get out, but how... This is so foolish. And this is the only time that I actually feel for Churchwell. Because I'm like, okay, I guess we're playing this little game now. As Pietro leads Charlie through the crowd of all the merrymakers, the party-goers, the drunken rabble, he shouts for Orsino to move aside, because he has brought someone for him. And the Duke just like, get out of here, you disgusting toad, and be gone with this girl. And he's like, and Pietro's like, you need to look at her. And he's like, now, Charlie. And Charlie, using the deepest voice she can muster and make it as pronounceable and loud as possible, she's like, look at me, Orsino, look at me, all of you. Do you not recognize the dress that I am wearing? It is I, Estella. You have to understand, Orsino, that I forgive you for trading me away like I'm some kind of horse. And this really shocks Orsino. I mean, this was completely not something he expected. He really, really was convinced that Estella was gone forever. And just basically wanting just to die in misery. And he sees this young woman saying that she is the essence of Estella, that she is Estella reincarnated, and it just completely fogs his mind. I mean, now, if you thought he was crazy then, now he's completely insane now. And as everyone is just in shock, the Duke orders that everyone just return to their dancing, return to eating and drinking. Let him deal with these two. And Pietro is, saying that you will accept her as your new wife. But the Duke is still not convinced. She's wearing the wedding dress, and she knows what he did to her. I mean, of course, it's been 100 years. So probably not a lot of people are still alive at this point that witnessed any of this. But Charlie tells him that she has come back, that she will forgive him, and that, the only way to truly save Venice is to be married by Dawn. Now the Duke is like, no, I have been fooled. I'm an old man. I just want to die in peace. And in the other part of his brain, he's like, is it really you? Because he does love Estella. He does love her. And having any hold of something like that, something tangible to hold that says that they are Estella, or it's a piece of Estella, he's gonna take it. And as he announces to everyone that he has found Estella, that they will be wed at dawn, Miss Lavish shows up, and he's like, "Be gone, old woman. This is not a place for you." And she goes, my dear, my lord, I thought that anybody could come and go as they please. I'm just here, for merrymaking. And the Duke is like, "You are just tiring the old woman, but you will be of some use." So he orders Pietro and Miss Lavish to take Charlie up to Estella's old bedroom, where she can rest for a little while he gathers up, I guess, his soldiers or something, get everybody ready for the nuptials at dawn. Yeah, talk about, he's not there anymore. Well, the Doctor and Churchwell are imprisoned on the cultist boat. They are now their prisoners, and they're being led from their secret lair somewhere that's, I want to say that it's like part of like a canal or something that leads to maybe some big rock that you see like in Fantasy Island or something. Just, that was a lair. I don't know. It's kind of hard to picture that. And in my head, I'm thinking it's like a very foggy night. The water's very black. And Church was like, "Are you honestly sure that this scheme of yours is going to work, Doctor?" And he's like, "No, but what else can we do? And I've got to find Charlie because I just led her from one dangerous situation, which in my head was in the Sword of Orion. You know, that was an extremely dangerous situation, to the planet that had no name that we first got to when we started the audio that they were shooting at them, and now to this place." And he's like, "I just never learn. I always put my companions in danger." So, and Church was like, my biggest thing is like, what are we going to do when we get there? There is no portrait. There's no way that we're going to convince Orsino, who doesn't care about art, who probably, if there was a portrait, what would he care? The room that Charlie is led in is just absolutely disgusting. Pietro just sits down, has no idea what to do next. For one thing, the Duke doesn't care about finding old Estella anymore. He would rather marry this younger woman who says that she's the reincarnated form of Estella, but it's still not going to... In his head, he's thinking that what he's done now has ruined his chances for his people, that the curse will somehow be lifted if the Duke marries Charlie, because he thinks it's Estella. And Miss Lavish is annoyed because she's like, "You're that girl that I met with that drunken man." And she's like, "He wasn't drunk. He's just eccentric like that." And she's like, "Well, what are you doing? Why are you getting involved in this?" And she's mad. She berates Pietro by saying, "You've led this poor girl to the slaughter. Either she will be, that we're all going to die at dawn when Venice sinks, or the people are not going to accept her and they'll have a rebellion." I mean, the Duke is not doing anything to help the curse. He's just basically trying to find forgiveness for himself so that he will die a happier man, I guess. So, while they figure out what to do, the boats that are carrying the Doctor, Charlie, and Vincenzo and all the cultists suddenly get rocked. And Churchwell starts hearing screams in the background, and lo and behold, they see most of the boats being just ripped apart, like by hands, ghostly hands that are coming out of the water, just tearing everything apart. And all the cultists are being grabbed and just dragged into the water. And the Doctor's like, "Who are they?" And Churchill's like, "They're the gondoliers, and they've gone mad. They're just dragging everyone down into the depths," as their boat is just ripped apart and they are dragged deep down into the depths of the canals of Venice. Miss Lavish is actually growing tired of sitting in Estella's old room and gives a helpful suggestion. "Why don't we just head back down to the party and have some fun, Let's just forget this whole thing." Well, Pietro is not convinced that his mission is lost. He does think it's foolish, and Charlie does convince him, now that she is no longer under the control of the drug, that the Duke has absolutely no desire to save this city. And she is in no hurry to get married to some crazy Duke, so she wants to leave, and Pietro begs her to let him come with her, and Miss Lavish decides to join too. But getting back to Pietro, now it does seem that maybe in the beginning of this script that the writers were probably thinking, let's have Pietro become the second companion of the Eighth Doctor. And it seemed like that where they were going with this, because when I first heard this audio, I'm like, okay, good. So now he'll be part of the family. Unfortunately, and I'm going to tell you now, Pietro does not join the Doctor's party. Now, saying that, his voice actor, and listening to this over and over again, I've come to realize that I think that the voice actor that plays Pietro is the same that is Kara's when you get to the Divergent universe. And we're not going to get into the voice actors yet, but I did find that kind of strange, and I have not looked it up as of recording of this video. So, Miss Lavish joins them, of course, and as we get back to the canal, the Duke's guards are pulling the bodies of the cultists that have been dragged to their deaths and drowned and released by the mermen. And it seems that the only ones that have survived is the Doctor, Churchwell, and unfortunately Vincenzo. And Vincenzo and Churchill start bickering back and forth until the doctor's like, like an old school teacher, like Ichabod, like, all right, kids, that's enough. I just want to get inside, get dried off, have a nice cup of tea, and let's just figure this stuff out because, it's getting to the end of the audio. So they burst into the party of the palace, and all the music stops as the doctor announces himself to Duke Orsino. And as he's approaching, behind one of the walls, Charlie, Pietro, and Miss Lavish peer out, and Miss Lavish thinks this is very interesting. This night's just getting better and better. And Charlie's like, great, so I'm glad he hasn't left me, but I have no idea what's going on, so she tells the other two to stay quiet, that she is thinking of a plan to deal with this. So the Duke orders them away, and he doesn't realize that they have the leader of the cultists right there, who he probably would really want arrested. And Churchwell explains himself by saying, we had just been through hell, basically, and Vincenzo's like, out of my way, you fool. I am the Lord High Priest of the cult of Estella. And the Duke, of course, arrests him. What would he think was gonna happen? So the priest tells him that he has something to bargain with, that the Duke cannot execute him. I would be kind of terrified at this point, because the Duke is just absolutely bonkers. And the doctor's like, yes, Orsino, you really do need to listen to him, because in his underground lair, there is a casket. Now, at the sound of that, the Duke kind of has a little tinkle in his head. He's like, a casket? Now, you would think that, yes, he's shocked, but it's almost like one of those shocked, like, I don't believe you, even though he has spent 100 years looking for the body of his beloved. I mean, at this point, though, you have some younger woman claiming to be the reincarnated essence of Estella, also in the same night that this stranger, his art advisor, and the crazy cultist leader come to him on the same night and say that they have a casket that contains Estella's mortal remains. And as they're hearing this, Miss Lavish is just enjoying this. She's just absolutely... In my head, I'm just seeing her with this big old smile on her face. She just can't get enough of it. But the doctor does say that the priest is holding them captive and will release them, even though he has no men now. They all died. And they are in the company of the Duke. I still don't know why he's acting like the cultists have the upper hand at this point. I don't know. But he tells them that they will be released if the Duke gives up the portrait of Estella. And the Duke just shrugs it off and again says that there is no artwork of the Lady Estella, and says that if there's any other questions about art, you need to deal with all of it. All of the inquiries need to be dealt with by Churchwell. And the doctor, in his debonair way, this younger doctor, starts to, kind of annoy the Duke a little bit. And the Duke is like, well, you will make a perfect human sacrifice for my nuptials at dawn. And at this, Churchwell is stunned. I mean, okay, when he left, the Duke was just like, I'm upset that Estella has not come back. Would she have forgiven me? I have not found her. I just, I don't really care about Venice. And Vincenzo is more like, you're going to get married again? How dare you betray her, you blasphemy! So, the priest points out, that you cannot, under any circumstances, take a new wife. That would be a betrayal of everything of the last 100 years that they have worked for, and that it would also betray everything that the Duke has, worked for, by saying that he loves her, and yet he can't let go of her, but he'll take this much younger woman if it would mean, saving his own neck. But, of course, though, the doctor still requests the portrait, and the Duke orders everyone just to leave. But the doctor, does try to reason with him. The Duke doesn't want to believe him, of course. And the priest calmly explains that Estella's remains were given to him by his grandfather. So if you think about it, there really is no one left alive in Venice. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe Venice only has the remaining people in the palace. That's it. Maybe you have a few drunken revelers that are still on the street somewhere. Probably no kids. Everyone else is gone. All the boats have left. The canals are, the bridges and all the waterways are sealed off. Venice is gone. So you just have all these rich people that are still left that think that, nothing's going to happen. It's kind of like when you look at Independence Day and that scene where everybody's on the tower waiting for the aliens and they get blasted. That's how I kind of saw this point. You just have all these drunken people wearing masks and having fun and thinking that, oh, everything's going to be fine. Well, it's not. So the Duke asked Churchwell, "You are my most trusted man here. Does such a casket exist?" And of course, both men, including the doctor, both answer yes. So the Duke demands that to be taken to her. And Vincenzo's like, "You dare enter my domain? You will be under my authority, Orsino." And the Duke, fights back by saying that Venice is still my city. It is my domain. You have no power over me whatsoever, and I demand that you give me her remains. And Vincenzo fights back. He's like, "You are not welcomed in the sacred chamber, Orsino, because that is where she lies in rest after you had her commit suicide. You have no right whatsoever to give us any authority when you are in our lair." So the Duke is asked again, and for the portrait, and the doctor's like, "I think that's a fair trade, Orsino. They will allow you to see the casket if you give them the portrait." And Orsino, again, is like, "There is no portrait." And Churchwell's like, "Yes, I have told them that over and over again." But the doctor's like, "I have seen your collection, Orsino. You've got a lot of great portraits down there, a lot of great pictures. And I've noticed two of them, and the ones that we have talked about, the girl in the glass jar and the foxes running from the volcano. He has seen some of those styles, and I guess the place where the foxes were. And he's like, that I know these places because I've been there, and they're not on Earth." And Orsino's like, "I've had enough." So he calls his men together to rally so that they can go to this underground lair of the cultists to retrieve Estella's body. Well, suddenly Charlie comes out regal and magnificent, pretending to be hypnotized again, or under the spell of the drug, and Miss Lavish orders everyone to make way for the Duke's new bride. And as the Duke's like, "Why have you come here? Go back to your room. I will deal with you later." And Pietro's like, "She couldn't stand to be away from you anymore, Orsino." And the priest is horrified. He points out that this younger harlot, if you will, is your second duchess, and she will never be. We will never accept her as Estella. But the doctor blurts out, "That's Charlie." And Miss Lavish is like, "Good job, doctor. You couldn't just play along." Which I can't... How was he supposed to know? That whole scene just didn't seem right. That, he sees Charlie dressed up and she's acting like not herself, and he says her name, but unfortunately, yes, it does make the Duke like, "Oh, so you know this woman, don't you, doctor?" And he's like, "Well, yes and no, and maybe." And the Duke's like, whatever. He may think it's a scheme, but now in his head, he must find Estella. So he orders that Charlie come with him as well. So the doctor, Churchwell, Vincenzo, and I guess a handful of guards himself, all go to the underground lair to find Estella's casket. But before going, he orders his guards to grab Vincenzo. And it's kind of a shock to everybody as the Duke stabs him, I'm guessing right in the shoulder. And he's like, "I'm not going to kill him. Far be it from me to kill somebody who knows the location of my beloved's remains. I will have him bleed copiously, to be in pain as he witnesses Estella's grand return to the palace, and then he'll be executed or something." Well, Miss Lavish has had enough. She screams that this has gone on far enough, that you men need to stop fighting with each other. And the Duke orders her to shut her mouth. And the doctor's like, I would agree. I have to agree with him, Miss Lavish. He's really handy with that sword. And she's like, basically telling the doctor to shut up. Ever since he got here, she has made the situation 10 times worse. And Churchill agrees with her. So the Duke orders Miss Lavish be thrown out, but she growls back that fighting against each other is pointless. That once dawn emerges, they'll all be dead. So what is the point? So the doctor's like, yes, I agree. Everyone, let's listen to Miss Lavish. And if there's anyone left in the city, I have a ship that I can get everyone out, and we won't have to die here tonight. We can all be saved. But the Duke is done. He pushes past everyone, grabs the priest, and Charlie, using her drugged voice, asks him, where are you going, my love? And the doctor's like, why are you talking like this? He's now at this point that he's like, Orsino, did you do something to my companion? Because I will take a very firm stance against that if you did. So he orders his guests to continue to dance, and he will return. But Miss Lavish does give him a stern warning that if he is going to follow this little adventure of his down into the dungeons and to the caverns and to the chamber where this supposed casket is, he will see more blood by the dawn's light. The Duke laughs it off. He's had enough of this. He finds this old woman really annoying, but her defiance of him is really firing him up. So he says to his revelers, he's like, I will return to you all by dawn, and we will have this grand wedding. But in my place, I put this haggard old woman in my place to rule you until I return. And then everyone, gives her a little pity clap and everything. He's like, and Miss Lavish is like, my lord, thank you, you do me honor. And of course the Duke plays along. He's like, take up the throne, Miss Lavish. As he pushes back, everyone back, and has Vincenzo, the doctor, Charlie, Pietro, Churchill all follow him to the ducal barge. So Miss Pietro and the others are on this grand barge, if you will. I guess the way that I picture it in my head is kind of like how maybe a miniature Noah's Ark probably would have looked. It's kind of a square-looking boat. I mean, however you want to picture it. And Pietro is like, you can smell the destruction in the air, and you can feel that dawn is coming, and yet here we are sitting on a boat, basically captives now, and the Duke is at the bow of the ship laughing his head off. And the doctor finally asks Charlie why that she's acting in such a way. Or did she get carried away like she did? Maybe she's just that young brain of hers just jumping into situations she doesn't need to be in. And the Charlie's like, yeah, I faked the whole thing, doctor. And she was like, basically demanding why he ran out on her, while at the same time the doctor's like, you ran out on me, which is kind of true. Charlie did run out on him. And she says that it was, basically Pietro who put her into the situation to begin with. And the doctor's like, yeah, I ran into a few of your lot coming back to the palace. They almost tried to kill us. And Pietro's like, I understand that. My people are growing restless. I fear them more now than being with the Duke, because they will do anything to get their freedom, their revolution accomplished, and watch the city crumble into the lagoon that it was. He can see them following in the water. As he stares into there, he can probably see all the ghostly figures following the ducal barge. And Charlie's like, well, thanks a lot, Doctor. Again, you bring me into another dangerous situation when you promised me a nice merry party or something, and something for me to relax on. And the Doctor, replies that he always sorts things out. Well, as we've seen, yeah, you sort things out, Doctor, but why don't you ask the crew of the Vanguard that? I'm pretty sure that last little adventure, not the one that you overthrew the Empire and saved all those people and everything, and you got shot at back to the TARDIS, but yeah, ask the crew of the Vanguard. Not one of them lived. Or have we heard anything from the crew of the R101? I know I'm being a little hard on him, but you sort things out but you kind of put them in a situation. Actually, I kind of blame the TARDIS on this one. The TARDIS does kind of put them in situations that they have to deal with a way out of certain things. And Charlie's like, I do not want to see a dead body. And the Doctor laughs at this. He knows what's going on. Churchwell knows what is going on. And at the same time, the Duke approaches him after he's done laughing. He's like, Churchwell, please tell me it's true, that there is a casket. And Churchwell's like, yes, there is a casket, my lord. And, well, he wants to say it, but I think he realizes that by saying it, one, the Duke's not going to believe him, and two, the danger that they are in. So I think that I think in Churchwell's mind that all the cultists died when the merman dragged them all down. So he probably thinks that it's just Vincenzo that is left. But Churchwell does caution him that this may not be what the Duke thinks it is. And the Duke just throws it off. And also the Doctor advises that, again, maybe we should just go back to the palace, get everyone, and just get out of Venice. And Charlie's like, Doctor, no one's listening to you. And he's like, well, they've got to, because they're just sailing into more danger. And you can see how he goes up and down. He's like, don't worry, I'll figure out a way. But then at the same time, he's like, well, we're just sailing into more danger. At the party, Miss Lavish is just, to me, she's all laid back on the ducal throne, and, maybe have one leg or both legs propped up on the side, and she's saying that, I don't think the Duke will mind if we, ravage his wine cellar, and she stares out of all the foolish people that are dancing in their finest outfits and their masks, and she says to herself, I just don't understand you people. Why are you wasting your time here when you still have a chance to flee? Do you really want to die? Do you want to witness the end of something? Are you that a glutton for punishment? And then she laughs. She goes, just keep dancing, because soon I'll have my peace and I can finally sleep. So she does feel sorry for everybody, but at the same time, she knows that there's really no way to end the nightmare. So as the ducal barge comes to a stop, Pietro is frightened as they're all escorted out and head down into the lair. He knows that his people are watching them, and they're waiting. They're waiting for their chance to seize their opportunity to kill the rest of the Duke's men and then just flood into the lair to kill the rest of the cultists. Why they haven't done this yet, I really don't know. And suddenly Churchwell screams out for help as they are all surrounded by the cultists, hundreds of them. And the Duke is like, whatever, just take me to her remains at once. And Vincenzo leads them down. They can hear the chants, the ticking of the clock. And as they reach the casket, yes, Charlie can see it, but Pietro sees an opportunity and he takes it. He tells the Charlie and Doctor to run. But of course Vincenzo's like, whatever, it means nothing. But Orsino's like, no, I need the woman. And Vincenzo's like, the only thing you need is in this casket. So even as Pietro, the Doctor, and Charlie are running back up the stairs to get back outside, they suddenly hear all the screams of the Duke's men. All hundreds of these mermen are attacking them and killing them. There's no way back out. And Charlie's like, look at your people. This is what you want, Pietro? And Pietro's like, he doesn't know. He's really much torn. He really does. I think he does love Charlie. I think he's starting to have, he wants her to be okay, and he knows his people will kill her. So the Doctor's like, we got to get back into the chamber then. But she's like, but Charlie's like, you're going to put us in more danger going back down there. And he's like, well, there's really no other way. We can either go out there and get killed by the merman, or come down here and witness the casket being opened. The Duke and Vincenzo approach the casket, and the Doctor's like, you got to stop, please. you need to deal with what's going on outside, not to deal with this. It's not what you think it is, Orsino. And Orsino's like, what would you have me do, Doctor? They have taken my beloved and turned her into some kind of living goddess. And he's like, I know, I kind of feel that's how Liza Minnelli felt having Judy Garland as a mom, but this is completely different. And it's too late because now the clock chimes midnight, and Vincenzo is like, now, open the casket! And the casket lid is thrown open, and a whole loud gasp fills the chamber. And then you hear, it's empty, empty, empty! And Charlie looks at the doctor and goes, Doctor, I don't understand. He goes, it's too late. I tried to tell them. And it is too late. As the chimes of midnight, of course that's the name of another Doctor Who, ring out, the Doctor looks and says, it is now dawn. It's over. Time's up. It's the death of Venice. As the entire city of Venice is crumbling before them, Miss Lavish orders all of the dancers to run, to look, to see that all of the buildings around them are crumbling. Do they not hear the sound of the water rising? And the people, some of them at least, hear it, and they take haste and run out of the palace screaming their heads off. And as Miss Lavish takes her seat, she just ponders that, you really thought that the Duke was going to find Estella's body and all of this was going to be lifted and you would be living your lives in happiness. But no, the Duke has abandoned you. So there really isn't anywhere left to go. And she orders the band to strike it up once more. And I gotta give the band credit, because even at the end, as everything is basically gone, you can still hear them playing in the background. Kind of like how Titanic was. So the clock is done chiming, and everyone is moaning and groaning that Estella is gone. What do they do? And the doctor's like, everyone, we gotta get out of here. Even if the mermen are waiting for us out there, we have to get out. Venice is gone. The water is rising. But the Duke is furious. He grabs Vincenzo and he starts shaking him, demanding to know where the body of Estella has gone. But Vincenzo is like, no, someone has taken her mortal remains. This is a new age. And Churchwell kind of goes over to the Duke and he's like, I am so sorry. Basically, I knew that this was going to happen. And the Duke's like, you knew that Estella was gone? And he kind of points the finger at the doctor. He told me not to tell. And of course the doctor's like, well, yeah, but, But even before the doctor has a chance to finish, the Duke is like, but wait, where are her jewels? And he grabs Vincenzo again and he's like, you damn fool, what have you done with her jewels? And Vincenzo's like, no, she hasn't been taken. She has arisen. She has resurrected already. She walks among us. So now you have this old Duke fool, and now you've got this crazy priest that, just completely have lost their minds. Pietro comes in and say that his people are now in charge. They have one chance to get back to the barge. But the doctor grabs the Duke and makes him explain, at least in the best that they can, while everything is crumbling and everyone's running back to the barge. He won't let the Duke back on the boat. He demands to know why the Duke is so interested in the jewels. And the Duke mocks the doctor. He's like, I thought you knew everything, doctor. So once they get back on the boat and Vincenzo's lair is just completely sunken beneath the water, Vincenzo goes to the Duke and he's like, we need to join forces. At this point, I will make you a deal. I will help you. But you have got to tell me where the portrait of Estella is. And the Duke goes silent at this point. And Churchwell is whining and complaining that I've told this fool there is no portrait. As your art, as your art advisor, I would have known. But the Duke just whispers, there was only one portrait. And everyone just goes silent. But of course, Vincenzo's like, I knew that there was one. And Churchwell's like, well, what are you talking about? I don't remember ever seeing this portrait. And the Duke's like, it was small. And after I betrayed her, it was the only thing that she gave me. It was a sad, bitter reminder of how much I had hurt her. And Charlie faces the Duke, and she kind of tells him, look, this is your fault. Yes, you betrayed Estella, but you really have the means of ending this. She doesn't know how, but maybe having the Duke take responsibility for what he did. Yes, he acknowledges that he hurt Estella, but this whole ignoring the situation around him, trying to marry her when he fully knew that she was not Estella, but he kind of throws it back at her, saying that she was some witch that was trying to hoodwink him to either gain his money or power or something. And Charlie was like, no. And the doctor tries to step in, but she's like, no, doctor, let him, talk to me. I mean, yes, I did, hoodwink him into this, but he needs to take responsibility too. When they all reach the palace, it's still standing. Everything else is gone. And the doctor's like, so there is some type of unearthly presence that is keeping this place afloat. I wonder what that is. And when they rush inside, the Duke's like, where are my people? Where are my dancers? I mean, you can still hear the band. And of course, though, the only one that's still basically there is Miss Lavish, who, to me, is just lounging on the Duke's throne, just completely in her element. When she welcomes them, the doctor, and she even welcomes back the doctor, and he's like, I'm glad to see that you're still alive, and she acknowledges that too. But Vincenzo pushes past and says, forget this! Where is the portrait, Orsino? But then, with a simple little request, Miss Lavish's voice echoes and kind of grabs them, all of them, to listen to her. She orders Churchwell to step forward and to look at something on her neck. Now, what he's actually looking at is kind of strange for me, how I've kind of pictured this. Either it's a pendant, a necklace. She says it's the size of a cameo brooch. So to me, I think it was a locket. And as Churchwell stares at it, he gasps. And of course, he says Mother of God. But then she's like, no, it's Mother of Pearl. And she asks the Duke one thing. How big was this portrait? And the Duke replies, it was small. About the size of a cameo brooch, right. And it was the only thing that she gave you before she jumped to her death. So this is it, Orsino. This is the portrait that I gave you. And Churchwell's like, you are the Duchess? You're Estella? And she waves him off. Get off of me, Churchwell. You're breathing down my neck. And once she announces herself, the cultists and Vincenzo all collapse to their knees. They're like, my lady, you have returned to us at last. You can save us. And Estella spats at them to stop being such idiotic men. Stop being so asinine. All you have done is just worship something that isn't there. You honestly, you stupid people think that I, Estella, who, yes, brought this curse upon Venice, am gonna save you. This is the exact reason why that I would never save you. You have wasted, especially you, Orsino, you have wasted 100 years of nothing. You have learned nothing. You betrayed me and I gave you extra life, and all you've done is just sit in squalor and misery. That was not what I wanted from you. I wanted you to at least acknowledge how much you've hurt me, but also do something. And of course, though, she completely just shuts down the Duke. And when Pietro asks her, so if you're alive, will you doom my people? And she laughs. She's like, you have no people. But she does give Charlie a bit of pride and congratulations on playing her. She did a great job. And Charlie's like, well, thank you, but why didn't you tell us? We first met you when we arrived. You could have instantly have told us you were Estella and brought an end to this. But Vincenzo's like, no, this was supposed to happen. This was meant to play out. However, as we all know the Doctor, he's like, no, none of this was supposed to play out. And he reflects that his own people are just this crazy. He's especially with Rassilon and Omega and the gods of Ragnarok and all these weird myths and legends. I mean, he's like, you create these horrible images to either scare people, to control them. But understand, it all comes down to true events. There are things that happen and things that have to happen. But you two are responsible for all of this. Both you, Miss Lavish, or Estelle, whatever you want to call yourself, and the Duke. You are the cause of why this city is falling. The fate of all these people were because of you. And as Charlie steps up to Estella and she's like, can't you lift the curse? Estella's like, I really can't, child. I, after 100 years, cannot at this point. After Orsino betrayed me, I was so full of anger that I did curse the city to the T. That there's nothing that anybody, not even I, can do that can lift it. And the Duke stares at this woman. Even as Churchill whines again. Yes, I will say this over and over because Churchill is the most whiny character in Doctor Who that I have ever come across. He's not even a likable character, but we're getting off topic. Yes. So the Duke stares at this woman and he even tells you, he's like, you are not the woman that I fell in love with. And yes, it is my fault that you have become the shell of Estella. But all I see now is anger, hatred, and bitterness. And the Doctor's like, well, there's something else. And he produces Estella's jewels from his pockets. And he's like, I'm pretty sure, Miss Lavish or Estella, that these were not just for show. You alone, there's no such thing as curses, but you alone did create the means of destroying this city. Now, I don't know exactly where you're from. You're not from Earth. Because those paintings that I've seen in your gallery are not from this world. And Miss Lavish is like, yes, Doctor. I was a foolish young woman that came to this planet and fell in love with this young prince. He cohorted me into making me believe that I was loved. He forced his people to love me. And yes, I grew to love them back. I grew to love this planet and all that inhabited it. And everybody worshipped me. But then when Orsino betrayed me, I had no means of going home. What else could I have done, Doctor? Yes, my jewels are a device that controls the way that this city either rises or falls. And the Duke steps forward. Even as the Doctor's like, so there is no way. And she's like, you fools. The only way to truly end this curse is if a great sacrifice is made. You can't give without at least some kind of take. And Charlie's like, so you grew older, the Duke stayed younger, and then at the end Venice would fall. And she goes, yes. So the Duke puts a hand on at least in my head, puts a hand on the Doctor's shoulder. He's like, Doctor, give me the jewels. And Estella's like, Orsino, I beg you not to do what I think you're going to do. And the Doctor asks the Duke, he's like, can I trust you? And the Duke replies, well, you're going to have to. I don't know if this will work, but if I am responsible for this bitter woman, I will take my responsibility. And and the Doctor hands over the jewels and he puts them on. And what happens in this is that he starts reversing with his mind all of the anger and bitterness from the jewels, which starts this chain reaction. So he's kind of stopping the destruction with his own mortality, basically. At least, it's kind of hard to explain this one, too. I mean, they're all hard to explain if it's Doctor Who, and I've listened to this one a long time. But it creates this pillar of light. And you can still see the Duke, and he's calling out to Estella. And he's even holding out a hand, and Estella watches as this man that, yes, she hates him. But as the Doctor asks her, do you still love him? And she's like, love? I don't think I ever stopped. And the doctor just kind of steps back and she turns to everyone and says goodbye because she knows that she doesn't want to live without him. So she steps into the fire and they are both burned away. Even as Vincenzo is begging and pleading for her not to go, that it was a trap, it doesn't matter. They burst into flames, and once the light fades, they're nothing more than two charred bodies that were embracing each other. And Vincenzo is like, no, he betrayed her again. Because it was just a lie. But she was a foolish woman to accept his requests. And so, as silence falls, light comes into the windows. There is no more sound of screams or falling buildings or anything crumbling away. The water has stopped coming in. Venice has repaired itself, has been rebuilt in a matter of just milliseconds. And as they stare out into the new horizon of Venice, they hear footsteps, and all they see is Vincenzo running past them, carrying the two charred bodies of the Duke and the Lady Estella. And the doctor's like, let him go. Cultists are gonna worship whatever they can, and yes, he's gonna be worshiping those two dead bodies until he dies, and then his son will take over. It's a never-ending cycle. You can't control what cultists do. And so Churchwell kind of reflects his own life. He's like, I wonder if the paintings are okay. Oh, well, they can wait. If they're gone, they're gone. And the doctor, kind of praises him for that. You can always start over, Churchwell. Something new, something completely different. And Charlie's like, well, doctor, thank you so much again. I'm exhausted. I just want to go. And you know what? Since you're on a change of topic of, you can change your ways and start new, how about we go clean that TARDIS of yours? She's like, I would never clean the TARDIS. Which is kind of something that Mel would have said to Colin Baker's doctor. So as we end the Stones of Venice, the doctor is now the commandeered, one of the gondoliers, and he is just enjoying controlling the boat while Charlie and Pietro enjoy a fine little date by themselves. Are they together? No. Did she forgive Pietro? Probably. She probably would never date Pietro at this point. And, a little side note. And I really want to start doing this after the Stones of Venice. We're going to start getting into the casts of some of these. But I did have to correct something from my last statement that I brought up. Pietro is played by Barnaby Edwards. Kara's, which comes in the Divergent universe, who becomes a companion of Doctor who does sound like him, is played by Conrad Westmess. So I was wrong there. I mean, it was something that I looked up, so I think that next time we'll start getting into more of the cast, when the stories were written and all that. But as we close up, Charlie finds it romantic that in the end it was love that saved the city. And the doctor's like, yeah. But she's like, I know you're men. You don't see this. But this is what girls read about. And this is what we like. We know that love can conquer all. And yes, the Duke and Estella loved each other in the end. That's why she stepped into the fire. That's why he sacrificed himself. But in the end, they wanted to be together. And she looks at the doctor and says, I really hope you don't abandon me. And the doctor smiles down at her and says, never. You're my best friend, Charlie. Well, guys, that's it. That's the first audio dramas of the Pre-Zagreus. I hope you liked them. I know this has taken almost 2 years to do these 3, and we broke up the Sword of Orion, but I really hope you've enjoyed these. I really have not attached any type of method yet of how I'm going to write these. I don't like that I'm writing the script before recording. I think that wastes too much time. Now, the next one we're going to do is Minuet in Hell. Now, I will be adding more illustrations to this. I do not intend to break up the discs like I did with the Sword of Orion. I will only do that for the really long ones and the ones that I absolutely love. So Chimes of Midnight is going to have its own breakup, lots more illustrations. I do want to do transcripts, the complete transcripts for this. But if you enjoy these, please like and subscribe. They do help. And hopefully next time this won't be as long. I cannot guarantee this. I enjoy doing them. Sometimes the drawing is still kind of force me to do it. But this is Mr. D, guys. Thank you for listening. This is the Stones of Venice of Who's Corner. And I will see you next time.
Oh, what would it take to bring her back, Churchwell?
I really don't know, Your Grace. I'm not sure she'd be keen.
Isn't that what we all want? Wouldn't that make everything worth it?
Perhaps.
You think not? Could it be that you're less devoted, my Estella, than the rest of my people? You don't think that she could save us?
I do not think anything could save us, Your Grace.
Just as well. Salvation is, I think, such a dull and worthy concept. But to see her again, oh, when I think of when we first came to the city, they made her such sumptuous gifts. I knew they had fallen in love with her. We alighted Rialto, and proceeded to St. Marco, and they lined the walkways and canals to see her pass, just to see what she was wearing.
It is true the people of Venice adored Estella, but even if she returned tonight, she still couldn't save us.
They gave her the book she coveted, volumes printed letter by letter, on to the finest vellum, covered with the richest shot silk. She returned laughing one day, and our servants were carrying her spoils, 24 crates of fish and fruit and wine, and 100 weight of church candles.
Sir, this dwelling on the past, it isn't good. This was over 100 years ago.
Soon there'll be nothing left but the past, Churchwell. Tell me she'll be back before the end. Tell me she'll be here.
Look, here's someone. Maybe they haven't evacuated completely. Madam, good morning.
It's 6 in the evening, young man. Are you drunk?
Certainly not.
They're mostly drunk. They seem to think it's the thing to do.
Fatalism? Seems like a fair enough response to me.
They're all here for the party. That's what they think it is.
And isn't it?
Crazed aristocrats, madmen, irritable revelers, all of them here for the final carnival of all. I don't know what they're expecting, besides a great deal of destruction. They'll all die, of course.
And you? Why are you here? Is he always this impertinent? Me? Sometimes he's downright rude. He forgets about things like good manners and introductions. I'm Charlie Pollard, and he's the doctor.
Eleanor Lavish. I can't say he's any worse than some of them who have made it here recently. At least he has made an effort to dress up in a dignified fashion. Most of them wear their carnival costumes all day and night, and lie about in drunken stupors.
We aren't revelers. Well, not usually.
No?
I don't. It's a cell, look. It's more like a mausoleum. You're right. This is a golden casket. Tell me that isn't a bomb. No, indeed, look. It's a clock, counting down the hours. What have we walked into? I'd rather think that with my usual combination of insouciance and hapless bravado, I've led us straight into the cultist's holy of holies.
Oh, Mother of God!
And do you know what I think is in this casket? Don't touch it! Now who's superstitious, Stuart Churchwell? It's just as bad as that chanting lot out there. It's only a coffin. There's only a corpse inside. Doctor, don't know! We've come this far. Look what we found. Now, give me a hand. I want to get this thing opened. It is a very special portrait, you see, Your Grace.
Do go on, Doctor. I have no idea who you are, but you are being extremely diverting.
You flatter me.
You'll be even more diverting as a human sacrifice when I have your gizzards ceremoniously removed during my nuptials at dawn.
Gizzards? Nuptials?
I am to be married at dawn, with my people in attendance. We will all be there. It will be Venice's crowning glory.
And who are you marrying? How dare you marry again?
Oh, you really do bore me, you fervent little man.
I have no interest in your love life, Orsino. I'm concerned only with this business with the portrait.
You muddle me and fuddle me with all your requests. I hardly know who to believe. All of you, leave me to think in peace.
I know I often feel that way, but really, Orsino, we haven't much time.
Why should I listen to any of you? I have had 100 years of isolation and inactivity, of grossly prolonged life. And then suddenly you all turn up at once telling me you found my beloved's remains. Why should I believe you at all? We have had the casket ever since Our Lady took her own life. She entrusted it to our care. She created her own cult when she gave her remains into the care of my grandfather.
Things have rather taken unexpected turn. Oh no. You're not telling me that the real Estella's turned up? Well, that's all we need. Your friend the doctor seems to be behind this, Charlie. He's causing quite a stir. He's very good at that. Now quiet, both of you. Let me think. What's going on? It's the priests. They've seen something. What? Stop, you fools! Control yourselves! What is it? What can they see? Doctor, look! There's something just under there. Just under the surface of the water. We're being attacked. They're coming up from under the boat. Kill them! Get them away from us! What are they? Amphibians! Trolls! Mermans! Churchroll, give me your hand! Gondoliers! Churchroll, grab my hand! The others! The priests! They're being dragged down! They'll kill us all! The gondoliers! They've gone mad! They'll drag us all down into the depths! You can hear the buildings rumbling and groaning. The very stone is about to rip apart like silk. The foundations are sinking as we sail through it all. And listen to him. Listen to the Duke laughing like a maniac. It's probably been a bit much for him, Pietro. Now perhaps you wouldn't mind explaining to me why Charlie here's dressed up like this. It was my idea. Why is she going to marry him? Did she just get carried away, or is it just that thing of hers about jumping in at the deep end? Because if it is, I think she's gone a bit too far. You could ask me, Doctor. You're not hypnotized. I faked it. It seemed the simplest way. Charlie, what's been happening ever since you ran out on me? Ran out on you? I could say the same thing. All right, let's just say we're just separated during all the hullabaloo. I got caught up with our friendly cult and their stashed revenants. And meanwhile, you seem to have gotten yourself well involved. He made me do it. Pietro. Yes, I came across some of your pals earlier. They attacked our ship. They tried to get us into the water, but we weren't very keen. You don't understand, Charlie. If they open that thing now, there will be even more bloodshed. It is the hour! Open the golden casket! Oh my God. It's empty. Empty. How can it be empty? Empty! Empty! Doctor, I tried to tell them. Look, the hands of the clock are meeting. That's it then. It's dawn, and the clock chimes out for the death of Venice. Orsino, no! Can I trust you, Orsino? You will simply have to trust me, Doctor. To put right everything that we spoiled 100 years ago. Here you are. Orsino, no! What are you doing? Your Grace! Leave him! It is only fitting. But he is insane! He's putting on her necklace! It's glowing, Doctor. Is he insane? I might be insane after all these terrible years. But at last I realize what I have to do now. He's using it to channel his thoughts and desires. He's imposing his will upon the city. Look, the jewels have come to life. They're opening like eyes. It's too bright. I can't see. Estella, this is right. Join me in the flame. You will die, Orsino. Restore this city, and it will come at the price of your own life. It will take every shred of your life force. I have had too much already. I have been far too greedy. Join me, Estella. Step into the flame. Grow old with me. Our Lady, no. He is tricking you. The flames will destroy you. Stay with us. She must decide for herself. Estella, Miss Lavish, whatever you want to call yourself. You must know Orsino can't not save this city alone. To do what he wishes, you must go with him. I know that, Doctor. And do you still love him? Estella. Do I love him? Yes. Of course. I always did. Then there's no need for bitterness. Why don't you go in peace, then? Yes, I will.
Goodbye, everyone. No! Stand back, you fool! You'll be killed! Down!